What's up, YouTube? Zach's back with another attack, and today we're going to do episode 2 of season 2 of This Is Us. This is an exciting episode, another good one, as they all are, but we're going to be looking at this one today. But first, I just wanted to talk about how everyone thinks that mountains are so funny, but I just don't think they are. They're hilarious.
Zach's back with another attack, so come on in and just relax. Hit subscribe and join the fun. You're Zach to the future now, son.
Alright, YouTube, let's get right into this because this episode had a lot going on. And I want to start out by saying one thing. It is a little bit hard to tell what timeline we are in at certain points, and I kind of wish that that was a little bit easier to tell. There was times when I wasn't sure if it was present time Jack. Well, present time as in after they got home from him being at Miguel's after their fight, or if it was Jack when he stopped drinking the first time, or where we were at exactly. So if that could be better, that would be one thing that I could say might be able to be improved on this show. Other than that, almost everything else is great about this show. I also think there's a few times in this episode as well where people acted a little bit out of character, namely Kate, when she snapped on her mom and was like, "Oh, you sing?" Like, I don't think Kate would do that. And there's been episodes in the past where Rebecca is with the kids and stuff, and Kate doesn't really act like that towards her mom. There has been some subtle hints that Kate kind of has some resentment towards her mom for being a good singer and for looking pretty and everything like that, being thin, but it's not really in the same level as it was in this episode. I do feel like season 2 is not quite on the same level as season 1 yet, but it's really good to know what's happening with Jack, and it's definitely still an amazing show. Speaking of Jack, he's an amazing man. I like seeing his background and how he stopped drinking the first time. It definitely goes back to season 1 and shows us even more stuff that we didn't get to see the first time. Not to mention his dynamic with Kate is just built up so perfectly in this episode. He always does the thing with Kate where he puts his hands on her face and tells her everything's going to be okay, and that always calms her down. She's definitely a daddy's girl, you can tell, especially in this episode more than anything else. She likes him more than the mom, you would think. I mean, I know she loves both parents, but you can tell that she's really got a special connection with Jack. But in this episode, Kate has to, on 2 occasions, put her hands on Jack's face and tell him that everything will be alright. And I thought that was really, really cool and special. And this episode actually had some interesting storylines going on. We had Kevin, and he was returning to the Manny, which is interesting. We haven't seen that for a while. I really feel bad for Kevin because nobody seems to support him fully. Granted, everybody did kind of fly out to come and see him on the Manny, but at the same time, you gotta think that Sophie kind of was just laughing and telling him that it's the most unattractive part of him when he was worrying about being on the Manny again. And then everybody kind of left except for Randall's daughters, and Sophie and Miguel, obviously, but I don't think Kevin even really likes Miguel, so it doesn't mean a lot to him that Miguel stayed. Everyone else kind of left, and I feel bad for Kevin for that, but of course it's for a good reason. Kate got her singing career going, she got her first real gig, and she was playing in a bar, but Toby and Rebecca left to go and watch her, and Rebecca really throws Kate off, so that was unfortunate. But good for Kate for getting a good start on the singing career and having that progress a little bit. I like that storyline going forward. A lot of this episode was honestly some character development more than it was story development, which is good to have a good balance between character development and story development, especially when it's a season kind of building up to Jack's death and stuff like that. The next storyline we kind of had going through this episode was that Randall and Beth are going to adopt a kid, or more aptly kind of foster a troubled kid and try and make sure that he gets back on the right track. And they still haven't told their daughters, but they did address that in this episode, something that I definitely drove home in the last discussion about episode 1. And Randall had a lot of fears about this. Their daughters apparently were born very great babies and they've been raised great, so they're great kids, but now they're worried that or Randall is at least, worried that adopting a new kid might cause all kinds of issues. They haven't raised it, so they don't know what if this kid is too much for them to handle, and it's definitely legitimate fears and concerns. But I do think that he was a little rough on his wife. Beth didn't really deserve that. But I do like Beth's character development going out a lot in this season, more than it did in the first season. She was kind of just Randall's wife. Now she's her own fully fledged character, and even more so as the episodes go on, it seems. And the last kind of storyline we have is, of course, Jack and Rebecca, with Jack showing how he overcame his alcoholism the first time and how he's going to try and overcome alcoholism this time. The episode ends with him going to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, and he also tells Kate that he has a drinking problem, and he says he's going to tell the other kids he's got a drinking problem and try and get the support system he needs to really stay over it this time, because he's been drinking again for a few months. Last time he quit, but it came back, so he's trying to get over it. Obviously, we know that it's not going to last real long, if it ever even is successful, because he passes away. But that is a story for another episode. We still don't know how he died entirely. We didn't even get much hints on it this episode. So I'm just going to go through the characters a little bit, tell a little bit about how they were in this episode and what I thought about that. Let's start with Randall. Randall is always a great character. He always does the right thing. He's a great dude. I like the yo-yo trick that he did for the talent show, and I didn't like how Kevin kind of picked on him for it. It's a great brother dynamic, but it was definitely a little interesting to see that he kind of had a yo-yo that's a little bit more sophisticated of a talent than singing or doing an impression like Kevin did, but we will get to that. And Randall's fears are appropriate, but I think he handled them a little wrong. The way he took it out on Beth is not really her fault, but I like the way that Rebecca kind of had to be convinced by Jack to adopt a kid, and now Randall's kind of getting convinced by Beth to adopt a kid. He was totally for adopting a newborn, but now that it's an older kid and they have to do more work in theory, he's a lot more concerned, and it's kind of a role reversal kind of thing, which is very interesting. I like that a lot. Now, Beth, I do think that, like I said, her character is getting a lot more developed, and it's awesome. And Beth always starts out a little bit rude, it seems like, but as the episode goes, she gets a lot more good of a character, I guess. It's a little weird because in the last episode she freaked out while they were talking to the adoption specialist, and then at the end she took Randall to the place where William always used to sit, and she said that they were going to adopt a kid, and she was cool with it now and everything. In this episode, she storms out of the Manny recording, and then at the end, of course, she jumps into his arms and they kiss, and she says everything's going to be good, and everything is good. And then they tell the girls, speaking of which, the girls have some good characterization in this episode as well. At the beginning, they help out tremendously getting everything loaded into the car to go to the airport, and it really shows that they're independent and they're just very well raised, along with the dialogue that's said about them, how they never had to keep their parents up when they were babies, and they were just the best kids possible, really. One character that was sadly missing from this episode is William. In my discussion of episode 1, I did wonder if every episode was going to have some William poetry behind it. I think that would have been a really cool idea, but they obviously didn't stick to it. So, oh well, it worked really well on the first episode, but this episode was still good. I just like William as a character. I would have liked to see him somewhere in this episode. Moving right along, we've got Kevin. One interesting thing about Kevin in this episode is that he's willing to go back to the Manny, and like I said, I do feel bad that nobody supported him as much as I wish they would have, but I do like that some character development really happened with him and Randall, because they haven't had a lot of character development. A lot of the stuff between them has been negative. They got in that fight, and I think the only really good thing was when Kevin left the play to come running to Randall, but now we're figuring out that Kevin really helped Randall and Beth get together. It almost seems like if Randall wasn't getting help from Kevin, then he wouldn't be married and in the situation he's in now. Kevin listened in on the phone when Beth got asked out for the first time, and he even gave Randall the line that picked her up. So that was very cool. Kevin still having a subtle influence in Randall's life, and we're seeing that their relationship might be a little bit better than we thought. Sophie's an interesting character because I don't really know how to feel about her yet. She did kind of laugh at Kevin, and granted, it made a good ending because she laughed at his impression when nobody else did. Speaking of which, he did a Mr. T impression, and nobody laughed at the talent show when he did that except for Sophie, which was really cool, and it foreshadowed then she laughed when he came out in a diaper on the Manny show when the director was trying to embarrass him, and he just played it off like a good actor should, and that's great for the character of Kevin. But all in all, I don't think Sophie should laugh. I think she should be a little bit more supportive, but I think time will tell whether they're actually the great couple that they're making them out to be. Kate had a great story this episode. She was kind of the main focus besides maybe Rebecca, but we'll get to that. Kate really had an issue with singing. In the last episode, she was told she wasn't good enough, and it had nothing to do with her weight. In this episode, she got a call to be in a house band for a bar, and it was just filling in for the night, but she went and sang. Toby had Rebecca come with him because Rebecca kind of forced him to take her, and they went and watched. So Kate was singing. She did a beautiful cover of Landslide by Fleetwood Mac. I loved that. Like I said, the music is really, really good in this show. So Kate was very unnerved when she saw Rebecca show up, and they kind of had a fight at the end, and it was a little awkward. Basically, Kate confessed that Rebecca made her feel bad because of her not being able to live up to expectations that Kate thought Rebecca had. Whether or not she actually had them, I don't know. I'm not sure whose side to really be on because I don't think Rebecca meant any of that. But at the same time, I can't fault Kate for feeling that way because that's just how you feel sometimes. And that's an honest thing. It's a very honest show. And I really love that about This Is Us. But at the same time, what can you do? She's just trying to be a good mom, and Kate's kind of smacking her in the face. So, Toby, however, is great. Once Kate leaves, after her and Rebecca get in that little spat, Rebecca asks Toby if she's crazy or if she really did those things, and Toby says basically that Kate is sensitive around Rebecca, but he is Team Kate. He says, "I am Team Kate forever." And that's how he leaves it. He basically says, don't ask me to take you to places where she doesn't want you to be. Don't make me side with you because I am Team Kate. And Rebecca definitely understands that and respects that. Once they get in the car and have an awkward car ride with the three of them, Rebecca looks at Kate and says, I decided that I really like your fiance. And that was an awesome moment. Toby had a great facial expression after that line was said, and I loved it. And all in all, just the way that he supports Kate and is really there for her, encourages her, pushes her like he said in the last episode. I love it. He's a great dude, and I'm honestly debating whether or not him or Jack is the better man. The more the show goes on, it really seems like Toby is because he didn't have the alcoholism problems, and their fights are a lot more tame, it seems like, but then again, they haven't been together as long, they haven't been married, they don't have kids. There's a lot of factors that kind of play in, but I love both of those characters for sure. Rebecca, I've said most of what I had to say about her from the other things. I definitely feel for her, and I'm not sure whether or not I should be on her side or not, because I'm kind of on everyone's side. I agree, the show is so raw and real. In real life, it kind of happens that everybody's a little bit right, and nobody's really wrong, so it's hard to pick a side here. Miguel is a good character here. He doesn't do a whole lot, but he's kind of comic relief. He eats pigs in a blanket because Toby is trying to suck up to him, and that was good comedy. He laughs throughout the Manny showing, and he even raises his hand when they ask if anyone wants to do a Manny dance-off kind of thing. So he's basically just some comic relief. He's not a big character in this episode here, but he was funny. As for Jack, this was a huge episode for him because it did show where he's at in the present time, in the past, and where he's at when he originally stopped drinking. Apparently he stopped drinking the first time by keeping everything inside of himself, and he kind of took up boxing, punching a punching bag, and it was pretty intense. But it also showed how he was sneaking alcoholism behind his family's back, which is interesting as well, because in the first season you didn't see a lot of that. You kind of just thought that he up and quit drinking like that. And in their fight at the finale of the first season, it really does make it sound like he was drinking for a couple weeks or something and then quit cold turkey like it was nothing, and now he's saying that that's an issue with him again. But secretly he's been doing this for a long time, and that's really good to see. Whether or not Jack will stay off of alcohol, I don't know. It's really hard to tell. I do think alcohol plays a role in this. I'm going to do some speculation right now, I guess, because I do think that alcohol played some kind of role in his death. Whether or not it was direct or just kind of a factor, maybe he was blacked out on alcohol when the house burnt down, he had a moment of weakness or something. I don't really know. It's so hard to tell, but I am ready to find out. It's so exciting, and I think this season is really going to have a lot of things in the present time, with Kate's singing career going, and Randall adopting a kid, and Kevin doing this movie and trying to get good with Sophie again. And at the same time, it's going to show kind of how Rebecca and Jack settled after their fight, and leading up to the season finale, where I think we'll finally find out exactly how Jack died. I think it is going to take until the finale to figure everything out, but I guess we'll see, because Tuesday is the 3rd episode. I'm going to try and get it out on Wednesday, and we will see what happens, guys. Thanks for checking this out, though. We're going to keep talking about every This Is Us episode of Season 2, because I love this show. And if you're watching this, I bet you do too. If you haven't seen it yet, I know you'll love it. If you haven't seen my other videos yet, hit the subscribe button, because you don't know what you're missing. I'm not quite as good as This Is Us, but I'm working my way up to it. In the meantime, though, guys, I'm Zach. Don't you do crack, and I'll catch you in the future.